This is K.M. Weiland, and you're listening to the 43rd episode of the Wordplay Podcast. If my estimations are correct, I'm perhaps halfway through my bibliography of research material for my historical novel, The Deepest Breath. I'm closing in on the end of my World War I research and looking forward to delving into Kenyan history soon. One of my most valuable research resources are other authors' stories. Reading fiction and watching movies set during my chosen time period isn't the best way to glean the hard facts, but it does wonders for helping me visualize these faraway worlds. And it's always interesting to see how others have handled the same material. Plus, the cold hard facts usually stick better in my brain if I have a story arc to ground them in place. There are actually comparatively few novels and movies set during World War I, but I've been enjoying classics such as All is Quiet on the Western Front and Sergeant York. Do you know how to use emphasis in your writing? The latest post in the video series on my blog discusses the pitfalls of exclamation points and italics, and offers suggestions on how to use methods of emphasis to gain full impact. You can watch the video on my blog at wordplay-kmweiland, that's weiland.blogspot.com. New videos are posted every Wednesday. Meanwhile, enjoy this week's podcast. Does your story have the extraordinary factor? Readers want fiction to be extraordinary enough to thrill them with its strangeness and excitement, but they also want it to be ordinary enough for them to find aspects they can relate to. So how's a writer supposed to pull off this apparent paradox? How do we make our stories both ordinary and extraordinary? In general, stories and their heroes fall into two categories. 1. An ordinary character in an extraordinary situation. In the beginning of Star Wars: A New Hope, Luke Skywalker is a very ordinary character, a slightly dopey farm kid chafing against his boring life. But when the droids bring him Princess Leia's hidden message, he's forced into the extraordinary situation of fleeing for his life from Imperial troops and joining the underdog Rebel Alliance. 2. An extraordinary character interacting with an ordinary world. In Lisa McCann's Awake, protagonist Janie Hannigan has to reconcile her extraordinary ability of being able to see other people's dreams with her need to live a normal life, get good grades, and keep her job at the nursing home. The contrast between the character and his world is the catalyst that drives your story. An extraordinary character in an extraordinary world is suddenly ordinary. If everyone could see other people's dreams, Janie would fit right in and McCann wouldn't have a story. And an ordinary character in an ordinary world is just plain boring. If we'd had to follow Luke around his uncle's moisture farm for 2 hours, Star Wars would never have been a hit. The extraordinary element doesn't have to be bizarre. Jane Austen's titular Emma was an extraordinary character simply because of her unorthodox beliefs and actions. Patrick O'Brien's 19th century nautical world in the Aubrey Maturin series may not have seemed uncommon to those who lived in 1800, but war, in any century, is always extraordinary. Ultimately, most characters end up extraordinary in some fashion. After all, there has to be a reason we chose to tell this character's story above all others, right? Those that start out ordinary are often transformed by their extraordinary circumstances. Luke started out as a dumb hick and ended up a powerful Jedi. Captain Jack Aubrey and Dr. Stephen Maturin were transformed from historical anonymity to heroes, thanks to their adventures in the war with France. Examine your story to ensure that you balance the ordinary with the extraordinary. Finding perfect harmony between the two will produce just the right amount of conflict between the character and his setting, and allow him to both resonate with and inspire your readers. Thank you for listening to the Wordplay Podcast. To read a transcript of this episode, visit me on the web at wordplay-kmweiland, that's weiland.blogspot.com, and be sure to listen again next week.